G'day, Craig Ball here. Thank you for clicking through to get your unhealthy negative versus healthy negative emotions table and guide to go about changing your emotion. And how do you actually modify it and make that different than it currently is? Okay, this is a guide taken from my book, Reclaim Your Power, an excerpt from it. Free of yours below this. Yours free below this, just to download and hit it. So what does it do? What's a healthy negative versus unhealthy negative emotions table, and how do we understand it? Well, it lists the negative emotion, okay, and the healthy version of it. So what we're doing here, instead of going, oh, I'm just positive in the face of unhelpful negative emotions, we're replacing them with healthy negative emotions. So what that allows us to do is make the negative emotion or the negative energy that we feel much more manageable. And then it goes into behaviors and thoughts around that. So if you start to view it and makes those suggestions around how you can start to think and feel about your emotions to go about doing it differently. Now, this is particularly important because if I was going to say to you, okay, the one we're going to talk to you about in this is anxiety. Now, anxiety is one that a lot of us suffer from. I've been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder as a reference, so it's particularly important to me. But I know many of you watching this will be feeling similarly as well. So what do we replace anxiety with? Well, the alternative is concern. So if I tell you in the face of, crazy anxiety that just be concerned instead, it's really hard to get you to just to handle it in that way. So what it has here in this, and yours will be different because it'll be an A4, but what it has is anxiety and concern, and it has thoughts and behaviors. So how to go about acting and how to view what you're doing. So anxiety, for example, will unnecessarily view the negative aspects of whatever it is that's triggering you, whatever you see as being the problem for that anxious moment, for that anxiety phase. So what you can do instead is look at what you would do for concern, and concern is realistically evaluating the threat of whatever is triggering you. So realistically means, okay, well, negatives and positives, let's look at it both, and what is it more likely to be. So it goes through that. It also talks about being able to appraise the threat, okay, make a realistic appraisal of your ability to cope with the threat, rather than just believing, oh, it's too much and I can't handle it, it's all too much, I'm overwhelmed, it's too difficult. And that also we're refusing to create an even more negative threat in our minds and have more task relevant thoughts than in anxiety. Okay, whereas when you're anxious, you have more task irrelevant thoughts, stuff just flying off. It creates an even more negative threat in your mind when you're dealing with something that's overwhelming. And it might just be a complaint with some jerk. It could be anything. The big one for me in the early days when I started having kids, my eldest is now 6, the kids yelling would really wind me up. So there's just some points to start dealing with. Obviously, your behaviors are going to reflect and shape it, such as they're going to support what is happening in that emotional state. So when it's anxiety, you're going to want to withdraw physically from what's happening, what you consider to be the threat. You're going to not want to face up and deal with it. You're going to withdraw mentally, and you're going to ward off the threat. You may ward off the threat through superstitious behavior. If you're grasping at straws, anything you can think of, you may try to tranquilize the feelings with alcohol or drugs, and you might need to seek reassurance. Your behaviors, alternatively, when dealing with concern, to face up to the threat, to deal with the threat realistically. So do it in such a way, well, this is unfortunate, it doesn't feel great, but this is what it is. So a way to help you to start focusing more on concern, this is a hack that I developed a couple of years ago that I found really beneficial, is when you find yourself in an anxious state and you can acknowledge that this is anxious, okay, you can either say it out loud to yourself or close yourself off in your mind's eye and repeat 3 times the emotion that you want to relabel it. So when it's full of anxiety, you can just say concern, concern, concern. Now, what that then elicits for you to say is, well, what do I actually have to be concerned about? Because I have some way of arguing it out. When it's anxiety, it's almost like a cognitive end state. It's like an extreme. I'm suffering anxiety. I'm not just a bit anxious, but I'm suffering anxiety. So how can I go about regulating that? Well, let's just judge it as concern instead. Concern, concern, concern. And then what I found that did was it really lowered the energy out. And then I was able to go, okay, what am I concerned about? Now, often for me, it was the kids that are carrying on and screaming and making a lot of noise. I thought, well, it's just kids screaming. That's what they do. So it helped me to really work down and lower that level of anxiety. And then, is this something I can deal with now in the moment? Well, I'm in the car, I've got to get the kids to school. I've got to take them somewhere. No, it isn't. is it something I'm going to revisit later in the day, or journal out, or start to work through and analyze? So that's what I was able to do. So replacing unhealthy negative emotions with healthy negative emotions can start with how you label it, and that's what I was doing in that state. I was getting myself down to a state of concern as opposed to anxiety, and lowering that energy by just demanding concern, 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 and by relabeling it, closing my eyes when you do it, or in your mind's eye, in your voice in your head, your internal self-talk, or verbally doing it out loud. It may be more powerful. You're all going to have your own individual strategies for doing that, but just working down and then ask what I have to be concerned about. And it's the same with the various different emotions there that you go about replacing it with. Okay, so guilt. All right, the alternative of guilt is regret. Okay, rather than carry it around, it's horrible and awful, it's regret, regret, regret. And if you start labeling it like that, your mind and body knows physiologically how that responds, and you will start to respond accordingly. But then you've got to ask the question, what do I have to regret here? Is it really regrettable, or is it something I can move on from and go, hey, mistake, made it, no problem, shouldn't have done that, we'll do better next time, whatever that is. Okay, it's going to differ for all of you. I hope that helps. Can't wait to hear your feedback. Please don't hesitate to download the video below. The free download below that gives you the guide to all of these. And if you're interested in doing some more, if you like what you see in the video and you'd like to have a conversation with me about how we could potentially work together, click below on the Calendly and drop in a 15-minute contact with me, and we'll have a chat to see if we're a good fit, potentially could work together. I hope you found that beneficial, and I can't wait to hear from you.